On top of Old Horror Hill, in a secret laboratory, Professor Weirdo and Count Kook were in their monstrous glory.
Hey everyone, welcome to TMR Lounge, episode 3. TMR Lounge is where Chris and I find interesting people that we know, bring them here and just talk.
We attack them with questions.
We attack them with questions and maybe, if we're lucky, interesting conversations come out of it. And so far they have. So today we got with us a bunch of misfits. They call themselves the ODD support group. Now, ODD stands for oppositional defiance disorder.
Disobedience. And
please do elaborate. First of all, about the ODD, and then we'll talk about the general.
I'm just a bit concerned by the fact you grab people off the street and you use the word attack in there.
Yes, why not attack them?
Surprised you haven't been done by cops.
We verbally attack them.
Oh, well,
you haven't had echelon on your back or turtle?
No, it's all good.
Yeah, I know it doesn't work, does it? I know it doesn't work.
Sally or Louise, tell us a little bit about ODD.
Sally is Sally Louise as well.
I know.
Yeah.
So I should go Louise or Sally because that way...
okay, well, jump in, Louise. I'll just start then. ODD, oppositional disobedience disorder support group. We're here to support people who want to be disobedient, who want to stand up and do something that their conscience tells them to do, despite the fact that the system says that's not going to happen, that's not allowed, that's wrong, and so that can come in a number of forms, speaking out about a number of things, and we might say later about the Oddies Awards, where we acknowledge people from all different kind of walks of life, whether it be whistleblowers, musicians, all kinds, comedians, but who use creative disorder, which is one of the twin pillars of ODD, creative disorder, and the other one is direct action. So people that are getting out there using creative disorder and direct action to kind of get this message of, that disobedience according to conscience and ethics is a great thing. And
so, am I right if I would say this, like, let's say we have a person who says, hey, everybody, not everything is okay in the world, and we have all these problems, and this is fundamentally wrong.
They've got it.
If they appeal to your human emotions and say, maybe we shouldn't be cutting down all these forests, and maybe we shouldn't be bombing these countries. Now, I went on a long tangent there.
Tick box, yeah.
Yes,
that's right.
Is that a mental disease by the definition of the say?
Well, we're saying that it is. We're saying that it should be considered to be a mental disease.
Because everything is a mental disease according to
not
the
disease, sorry.
Because disorder.
As part of,
something that's not in keeping with the line of the... Sorry,
we're also
I was
a
going to
bit
finish
of
off
a
with the
protest
DSM,
movement.
but we won't worry about
The
that now, will we?
No, I think we need to address the DSM because the title of our movement or our support group is framed in the context of the variety, the myriad of disorders that are put out there by mainstream psychiatry as being things that deviate from what is normal and what is acceptable. And so we're saying, okay, well, if you're thinking, say, entertainment anxiety disorder is something that needs to be medicated or monitored or managed or any of those things, then, so does activism. And maybe Pope Fred here can talk some more about like what it is to be labelled, because you originally had oppositional defiance disorder post-infantile because of his political activism.
Part of the idea is to look at this DSM, which is a Diagnostics and Statistics Manual, which is like this little tick box that's used to diagnose people.
Let me just interrupt and ask a question. Did somebody talk to you, like an expert, generally wearing a white coat, with a psychiatrist after their name and say, look, my checklist here says that you have a mental disorder.
Yep.
And, we really need to fix this.
When I was in Royal Park, I was diagnosed with defiance disorder. It's called defiance disorder, and we call it disobedience disorder. Two different words for two slightly different things. But yes, I did get diagnosed with that because I considered myself to be an anarchist, and because I considered the world should be a better place. And so that was put on my file. It's still on my file as being post-infantile defiance disorder.
So don't get me wrong. Is this anyone who thinks outside the status quo outside the status quo.
That's in the DSM.
He's
It's
wrong.
young
There
enough.
is the
Pretty
potential for that, yeah.
That's
So
right.
when
If
he
you
goes,
get
I
out of line
don't agree.
enough,
I don't agree with the status quo. I'm out here and I'm heading in that direction. Then you've got this problem.
You can be put away. You can be
Pretty
diagnosed
much,
and put away.
It's gotten to the point now where they're basically diagnosing normal human conditions. They're trying to fit everyone in this box called normality. They've got things in there. I know in the DSM-5 they were going to put psychosis risk syndrome, which basically means my unborn children are medicated because I've had psychosis. Well, they think I have. So what do they do to that? They medicate them. Why do they medicate them? So they won't develop symptoms. How do they know the treatment's working? They didn't develop symptoms. That just seems retarded, you know. Binge eating disorder, I think that one actually got in there, right? Which basically states that if you binge on a packet on a food once a week for 6 weeks, you've got a binge eating disorder. So let's say you work all week, and on Friday you come home and you eat a whole packet of chips, and that's your Friday ritual to celebrate from finishing work. You've got fucking binge eating disorder, you know. It's insane the amount of labels they can put on people, and it's stupid because you can't define individuality. You can't fit everyone in this box. I always tell people the only probably mental illness is normality because it is a delusional state.
Well, what about like a lot of my friends, well not friends, acquaintances I suppose you could say, come home and every night have to drink 6 stubbies.
But that's alcoholism, isn't it?
To relax and to, you know, just to totally block whatever the day was and the kids and the whole family. But this is a ritual. This is not, you know, like, I'll just do it tonight. This is every day of the week. And some guys will drink a slab, you know, 24 stubbies. Now, I couldn't drink that. I'm not a drinker. But 24 stubbies just to take their mind off reality to go into that relaxed mode. Do they have a problem?
Yes.
Well, no, but wait a minute. That's part of the status quo.
Yeah, it is.
That's normal.
It is.
That's normal
That's right.
to drink a slab of beer.
But I mean, I would say that
and
when
it's
he was
industry driven as well. It's legalised.
It's not normal to drink
No, that's-
No,
salad.
but it's
Yeah.
socially
Hang on.
acceptable.
14
because it's making
units or
money for the
21
alcohol company.
But if
units.
it's
No, that's a
socially
good point.
acceptable, then it's not a mental disorder.
No, that's a good point,
Exactly,
actually. That's
yes.
a good point, because you're sitting here talking about that. Now, I'm an alcoholic. Because I can't stop. I have a problem with it. But it's a good point, because the way that was explained, slab every night, 6 cans every night, that to me, I'm sitting here thinking, fuck, your mate's an alcoholic, you know? But at the same time, like, what defines someone as an alcoholic? Who's got a problem, you know? I had a mate, and he was using all these drugs, and people said to me, look, your mate's got a drug problem, you need to talk to him. I spoke to him, he said, look, I suppose you've heard that I've got a drug problem, and I go, well, I don't know, man, I've heard a lot of things. And he goes, do you think I've got a drug problem? And I go, do you think you've got a drug problem? And he said, no. And I go, well, then I don't think you've got a drug problem. I'll think you've got a drug problem when you come to me and say, Peter, I've got a drug problem. I said, till then, it doesn't matter. And I think that's what it's about. I mean, as I said, like, I'm sitting here thinking, geez, alcoholic. And we all get caught in these frameworks, but at the same time,
Taking
Oh,
it's
drugs
like,
is not the same
you know,
as a drug problem.
yeah, but it's like, it's the same thing. You can drink every night.
Well, it's self-medication, isn't it? It's self-medication to get over the trauma that you've been caused to commit to yourself all day long at work.
Well,
But
drugs is for all reasons.
let's go back to like a point Peter made earlier, which I like when he said like we're trying to reframe what is normal. So it's like,
Is that what's socially acceptable?
yeah. Well, think about aiming for the average. Just like think of the insanity of aiming for the average. So like imagine
A mediocrity.
the average person can run 100 meters in 14 seconds, and then you go to the Olympic athletes and say, well, you guys are just like, you have a disorder. You have a disorder.
So you're saying we got a slide rule.
we're
and
gonna
then
give
go,
you
that's
some
mental.
We gotta give you some drugs so you can run this thing in 14 seconds as opposed to 10. I mean, like, you're supposed to. I mean, what is special about humans is that certain people, people are so different, and certain people excel at different things. And at the end of the day, it is behaviors which society finds, hard to deal with, like obsessiveness, that do move civilization forward. I mean, find me a great scientist that changed the world that wasn't obsessive.
Eccentric.
That didn't have social problems because they were like, Jimmy, screw you and your party. I'm going to be here with these chemicals and something's going to go down. Like,
But for some people, it hits them like lightning, like...
yeah, Tesla.
But it's like a musician too. A musician will, I remember, I'm not a music person, but I think it was, I don't know, a great guitarist. I'm not going to name him because I don't know, I can't remember. But he said, I never went out. I never went out with my mates and party. I was focused because I wanted to get it right. I mean, he was obsessive, but he's probably one of the best guitarists on the planet.
Well, that's it. I think things become a problem when we think they become a problem, and that can be influenced basically on what people say to us or whatever. But I mean, I've met people and they've been off their head, what I would define as off their head, in this total fucking delusional state. But you know what? It's working for them, so I'll buy into that, and I'll buy into that because that's what they need at that point. And you go along with it, and you go along with their framework, and then they ask the question, do you believe this? And I'll sit there and go, well, I believe that you believe it, so I honestly don't know. This is your framework, my framework's my framework, but you're telling me this, I'm hearing it from you that you believe it, so I believe that you believe it. Whether I'm right about it, like, do I think it's wrong? I think it's wrong for me. But am I right? I don't know. I said, this is the beauty of individuality, and I'll go along with that, and you'll find that people, they might either change their views as they come out of it, or something might happen and it's an adaptation or an overcompensation for something that happened to them in their life, but they need this framework to help deal with what happened to them.
Is a drug addiction, if someone says, look, I you may have a drug addiction, and someone says you might, like, get back to what you said before, you should have a word to him. Wouldn't the question be, now, don't get me, I'm not a professional, can you give it up? Can you give it up tomorrow? Could you stop tomorrow?
Well, that could be the difference between an addiction and a habituation.
Yeah, I understand also that people are in ritual, like, every night I do this, I drink water before I go to bed, like that's just a ritual, I do that before I go to bed. Is it that the same for someone who's or maybe the guy who's buying half a dozen beers?
Why do people that are medicated not be called drug addicts because they're given a script from the doctor?
Not just that, but also, like, if I sit there, how many people here work 5 days a week and get income for it? I personally don't, I do a lot of my work volunteer, but I know you work a lot and get an income. So if I just said to you, look, I want you to stop spending money tomorrow and stop earning money and actually just try and live homeless. Now that's stopping a lot of things. Does that mean you're addicted to money? Does that mean you're addicted to work? No, because socially acceptable, you work 5 days a week. I think it becomes a problem when people say this is a problem, when they think it is a problem. So you could have someone using drugs all the time. If it's not a problem to them, if they're functioning, doing whatever they need to do and what they see as functioning, I won't worry about it.
I would say that, though, that, there is a level of perspective which most people, the establishment, if you want to call it a psychiatrist, a counselor, if you tell them your story from your perspective and you're doing something that's considered socially extreme, they're going to go, well, whatever you're saying doesn't matter. Perspective, but even perspective or not, there are behaviors that kind of go over the line. Now, don't get me wrong. I'll give you an example from my life that really falls in the gray zone. I used to, back in up to 2011, I used to play a lot of poker. Now I had no problem giving up playing for weeks and months. It wasn't what anyone would define by some technical manual as addictive behavior, except once I got started, I couldn't stop myself. The number of times I've done over 24 hours is ridiculous. You talking about tennis? No, like playing, but by any definition, then it's some crazy obsessiveness about, compulsiveness to play a card game for 24 hours running. But at the same time, I could quit whenever I wanted, and at some stages, it just took up too much of my time. Then I stopped playing as much. But I had no control in certain moments in my life. In a wider context, I could easily give it up. I could easily not play for a month. But once I started, much like possibly some alcoholics who maybe have no trouble generally staying off the drink, but then once they've had that one or two, they can't stop themselves.
I got a problem.
So there is and maybe all the while I was playing for 24 hours, I would have told people I got it. So there is this gray area where there are pockets situationally where people don't have control, even though maybe as a wider context, it's not ruining their life or taking over their relationships or making them put people aside or whatever. But there are times when people can't control themselves, and I don't know if that is defined in the medical establishment, and what do you and that
impulse
kind of
control.
Yeah, it sounds like poor impulse control is what they call,
Yeah.
So, but part of this is this normality. Is you've got to ask who defines normality. It's a bell curve, and as you say, if everybody was in the bell curve, it would be an extremely boring world.
And it is the not normal people that make the biggest contributions to society.
Everybody falls outside the norm in some way, I'd say.
Most people do, yes.
Yeah, in some way.
I always tell people that normality is a delusional state, because what's normal for me will not be normal for you, and will not be normal for you, and will not be normal for you. So where is this fucking centered normal if all our versions of normal are different?
That gets back to perspective.
Or
perspective?
media, like how many people, like statistically, how many people buy into this certain amount of media that's fed and prescribed and kind of taught and subliminally infiltrated into their version of reality.
Yeah, it's not just pictures.
Just look at the elections.
It's not just pictures; it's words as well. I mean, I mean, if you want to talk about elections, we can go there. But
No.
I mean, I find that incredible. No, just off the topic, I find it incredible that we had two major parties, and every time you put on the TV, it was
That's a myth. That's an illusion.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Just getting back to media in general. There's only two parties preferred. Is it? Yeah. Preferred from what? From who? Yeah. But then when we talk about these micro parties, whatever they may be, unlike the commercial stations, you've got Channel 2, which we supposedly pay for, where are all these micro parties being interviewed saying, what do you believe in, what do you believe in, what do you believe in? But when one gets in, right, well, we can't have that. We can't have normal people in there. We can only be real estate agents and fucking lawyers. They're the only people that we can have in political situations. I mean, it's ridiculous.
To cap it off, you could say a slogan, you live in a country where you could choose from 28 types of detergent and 2 political parties, So seriously, in terms of the big question of how we distribute resources and relate to each other at a societal level, we're given 2 choices. But when it comes to washing your pants, well, that's okay to have 30, That's where things get ridiculous. And I would say that in terms of like these social norms, we have a social norm of you go to people that you just meet and you don't discuss politics and religion.
What's that?
Or weather.
I'm telling you, you would be more comfortable discussing sex at dinner with a bunch of 40-year-olds than actually talking about, religion or politics at a meaningful level.
Yeah.
And I mean, these are fundamental things. I mean, this is like what people, their meaning of life for them, very often, you could define that as religion, and our direction as a society would be in politics. So like the big questions for bigger, wider groups of humans are said like to be impolite. I mean, the social norm is that it's not.
It's complicated.
Yeah,
it's disagreement. It's just like you two were talking about earlier about putting your views across, even if they're not politically acceptable, or if the difference between trying to please people by kind of meeting what you think where they're at. Versus getting feedback and getting that kind of relational interaction.
Perhaps in a sentence, like I'm going to throw this out there and I'd like everybody to comment. Like, do we live in a society where it is seen as, I would say, out of line to put out honest opinions of the world at large and other people? Like, is it seen as out of line, to be honest?
Yes, you don't rock the boat, It's like, it's in politics. The ones who don't get in are the ones that sit there and come in and go, right, here's a problem, here's a fucking solution to that problem. The ones that get in are the ones that sit there and have all this bureaucracy and all this crap around things, and we do this, we do this, we do this, we keep all these people in jobs, we employ these people, and 10 years down the track we'll fix the problem. But you might have some young upcomer come in and go, these are the solutions to the problem, let's fix them.
Well, we could go there straight away and we could say, well, how come politicians, like, we don't go to university and become a politician, but there's no studying as far as I'm aware, right?
Political study.
You wanted to talk about shit.
Yeah, but
accounting,
but most MPs in Australia have got a tertiary degree. Yeah, now, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, but wait a minute.
Or they're lawyers.
Where's these engineers? Where's the academics? Where's the scientists that are in politics?
Yeah.
They don't exist. We got fucking used car salesmen, real estate agents, and lawyers.
Because they learn to talk shit.
Yeah. That's right. They're bullshit. They're wordsmiths,
exactly.
right? And word manipulators, right? Pretty much.
Salesmen.
Yeah, salesmen, right?
They're all salesmen.
So where's all the academics? Where's all the engineers? But we know straight away. Like everyone says to me, well, why doesn't Zygus get a political party and go out there? Because now you're in their sandbox,
exactly.
Right? And there's rules in that sandbox that you can't get out of. So it won't work.
And you're right. I mean, you're right. A platform. Frankly, like my political views. Change by somewhere between 5 and 10% every 6 months. And, if you're at a party, you need to come up with a bucket of ideas. And somehow, all these people, like hundreds of them, actually thousands of them, is meant to be complete. They're buying into this bucket. And you have a right in this country that believes that global warming is bullshit. Abortion is something that's yeah. Well, give me a second.
The flat earthers.
Give me a second. Like no. Here are these buckets, and what's the connection between they believe global warming is bullshit, abortion is bad, immigrants are bad, and free market and companies should be allowed to do what they want. Now, wait, economic policy on companies has got nothing to do with abortion, which has got nothing to do with the climate, which these are, and on the other hand, global warming is a huge global problem that we got to do something about, and abortion is a woman's choice. And companies are just big, bad, and evil, and we should do something about them. And it's not that these are separate issues. You should make your own mind up on each and every one of those issues, and to have them put together artificially in an enclosed bucket, like if you believe this, then you'll believe these other things, is just it takes the thinking away. Like there seems to be an automated taking away of
critical thinking.
And to me, this is where Australia is particularly pernicious, because we have compulsory voting. We have to get out there. We have to believe that our little tick in the box makes some sort of difference. And if you don't, you get a fine.
Because we should be voting on the issues, like you say, the individual things, having a referendum on each thing rather than kind of voting for a party,
But that's why the government's so scared to go for a referendum. Because they're so scared that the public's going to go, I don't want that, and I don't want that, and I don't want that. Even though they're so conditioned with the media to believe that this, and this, they still don't want the people to go, hey, wait a minute. But that's why, even Joe says, right, how many people walk in there and go, yep, tick my name off. Fuck this, I'm walking out the door.
Yeah, well, that's right, bloody vote.
It's getting worse and worse because people are so disillusioned that there's no difference between any of them. And the other thing too is, and I've noticed this with American politics, is it's easy to have two parties. You can control both sides. But when you're like Venezuela, 15 parties went to election, right? 12 of them had the power to run the country tomorrow. We're talking, they had people, academics, whatever they may be.
Numbers,
but 15 parties went up for election. That's democratic. Not two. It's ridiculous to think that there's only two parties.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's part of bipolarity of politics, really. It's saying you're either for or against. It's got a whole left wing, right wing.
But it's not even that now. It's are you for or are you for a little bit? No,
that's true. Very true.
It's that point.
Do you want a lot of it?
Let's bring it back to the normal, because see, we have the right-wing party and the left-wing party, and this is true for the UK, for Germany, for France, USA, pretty much every major Western country. And one sets the left limit of the acceptable range of thinking on major political issues, and the other sets the other limit. And so all of a sudden, it's like a message to the country, to everybody, that, well, you can think about how we run the country as long as all your thinking falls in between these two artificial boundaries that we put in front of you. And it's kind of like the analogy of the electromagnetic spectrum, invisible light. In effect, 99% of it is invisible, and much like 99% of what we could do with the world and society is not a part of the daily experience of the average person growing up. Because they're told, like, well, if you think that poor people should be fed, well, you're going to be a socialist. You should be a socialist. And then, wait a second, like, if you want to start your own business and do that, well, then you're a capitalist. No, well, maybe just you think poor people should be fed. Maybe it's got nothing to do with whatever bucket label somebody created 50, 150 years ago. And the idea of an individual making their mind up on every issue is something I think that whatever forces control society are not cool with.
Two-party system is also the Hegelian dialectic. It's social control. It's saying these are the issues. That's one side, that's the other side. We're going to meet in the middle somehow by pushing this together. So it's kind of a way of engineering, like, the direction. And they only present a certain range of topics.
It's like a slide rule, right? Everyone knows how a slide rule works. You have this much in the middle. And the whole lot can move this way a little bit and can move that way a little bit. But it never goes down to that. It never goes down to the points. It always goes into this grey area, and the grey area can go left and go right. But it can't go like that. And it can't go like that. Because then there's too many people, too much input, too many different ideas.
We framed this I think we've done the topic of. Wait a second. We have we don't talk about religion and politics, and then politics.
Oh, I love that.
So
we don't talk about religion and politics.
The range of thinking is artificially limited, and well, what does that mean for the average individual who now, once they start thinking outside of that? I mean, this has got a lot to do with ODD. I mean, I'm sure that the people that are, almost in a compulsive, semi-desperate way, knocking down the door of some political institution, going like, you guys are nuts, and nothing you say makes sense, this is what we should be doing, regardless of all your bureaucratic, la la land. Now, those people are considered nuts, but perhaps they are seeing reality much... Even from an objective point of view.
There's someone who said that in a sick society, the insane are sane, sort of thing. You know what I mean?
Krishnamurti.
Right, very good.
Wait a second.
Say it exactly.
It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
Exactly, and that's exactly what I think.
Yeah.
Where I think we're going with the ODD support group. We support everybody in effect, because everybody who thinks for themselves basically has got ODD. Just a little bit of defiance, a little bit of disobedience, that means that you're thinking for yourself.
But think about this, if you have a mature society, right? Like, that society should look upon criticism in a grateful way, in a sense.
In a democracy, you are obliged to challenge.
Kennedy said that. He said he actually used the words support and disobedience in the same sentence to describe what you need in society to make it work. And
because in order for you to find out what you're doing wrong, there needs to be someone else out there watching you, telling you, floating an idea out there. Well, you're doing this, and it's harming the world in this way, and you should be doing that, and then you hear that, you examine it, and you see if it works. Much like, they say that, and I read this from a corporate study, and they've found something quite interesting. People that are proficient at their jobs, that, have done this thing for 20, 30 years, and are essentially very, very confident people, they appreciate constructive criticism much more than backpatting.
Yeah.
And you see the way the government is set up, the way society, even the institutions are set up, criticism, constructive or not, they treat like someone is shooting at them with a gun. It's almost like our governing institutions exhibit the behavior of an insecure child needing constant, pats on the back, they only want to hear...
Yeah, but it's like when you listen to Question Time.
Back are good.
Yeah, but it's like when you hear Question Time in politics. Oh, I thank the Honourable such and such for his question. It's all this backpatting. It's all this. Oh, thank you for that question, but there's no attack. There's no just like you said.
Well, that's like I do a lot of work with different organisations, and all the shit that goes on behind the doors and stuff, it just does your head in. And it's like you'll have people that are nice to you up front. And they're all happy to be friends with you and all that, and you think, oh, that's nice, But behind your back, they friggin' hate you. Yeah. And they won't say anything because they know that one day they're going to need you to run a course for them, or they're going to need you to do this. And if they keep sweet with you, you'll do the right thing by them. And it's like, fuck, I would rather be told I'm an asshole about something, or someone's got a problem with something.
You're working for the council, eh?
Maybe.
Mental health.
It worked for me. But it's like I would rather be told those things so I can examine it and look at it and fix a problem, and especially in like interpersonal relationships, like work relationships, whatever. Someone's got a problem with you, talk to you about it. Someone's got a problem with you as a human, talk to you about it, try and communicate and meet in the middle. And most of
you try to tell someone who's rude and arrogant that they're rude and arrogant, see what happens.
What are you saying?
They'll probably get you.
No, I'm not talking about you. I'm just saying in general, if you come up and say, look, mate, you're very rude, you're very upfront, you're very arrogant, you watch how quick you get smashed.
Avoidance.
Yeah, they don't want to see it for what it is.
Exactly, because it hurts, It really does, and I do a lot of work on this. Like I looked at expanding upon avoidance, and it's interesting how often humans use it to deflect from emotions such as guilt and things like that. Like, I mean, I used it, schizophrenia, I used it for 15 years unconsciously because it was easier for me to put it all in a framework of mental illness, I'm unwell, I got no control, than to look at the fact that I had a very real problem, which was rage, and I tried to kill people, and I had control over that. And I still get pissed off. Like, I get upset that when I look back at the past, I can't now say that was beyond my control, because it was. And I've got so much guilt associated with the things I've done. You're talking to someone who's picked people up and thrown them like rag dolls and tried to put knives in people because of a rage problem and also drinking. And yeah, there were voices there at the same time. But I would love to be able to put that framework on it again, because it would allow me to avoid it. But at the same time, while it would avoid the guilt, it wouldn't allow future growth. I wouldn't have got to this point. And it's very much a matter of that in society, that if you attack someone or what someone perceives as an attack emotionally, they will actually backpedal and change it and arc up. I always be wary when I'm telling someone something and they get really angry really quickly. I go, oh, yep, hit the nail on the head. I won't say that because I just don't want to infuriate the situation.
That's it.
But it's like you'll notice how quickly. But if someone tells you something, like if I sit there and go, look, mate, I've got a bit of a problem. I think you might, steal cars. Now, as far as I know, you don't steal cars. Not that you'll admit. You'll just sit there and go, yeah, whatever you reckon, or you go, no, I don't steal cars. What's this guy? You won't care. But if you are, and you think it's a problem, you will arc up. You'll go, no, I don't. What makes you think that? I'm pissed off with this accusation.
You actually made just this thing you just said just brought a memory back into my head, and it was my brother-in-law is a sales executive for a big pharmaceutical in Sydney.
Oh,
and
we
had many conversations on many topics, and he only exploded once. And he exploded once when I said something like, well, doesn't it sort of bother you that you have every incentive, say that you found a really simple cure for a major disease like cancer. Yeah. Like, you could never afford to bring it out. First of all your sales would go down and everybody would copy it, and then you would crash your own company. And he just went off at me. And he was just like, oh, I don't want to hear your conspiracy theories. And that was the first time he even used the word conspiracy theories, first time he got angry.
Fantastic word, conspiracy theories.
And
easy write-off.
It's a
and I think I really did hit the nail on the head, because the incentive is something that anyone up in the corporate world, that's what the whole name of the game is. The whole situation is governed not by people telling people what to do, by people setting up incentives.
Yes, that's right.
And in a sense, I uncovered that, it doesn't matter, I don't know if it's happening, but there's evidence that it happened in the past, and it's almost definite that every major pharmaceutical has exceedingly strong incentives to hold back cures to diseases, especially if they're not patentable.
Yep.
And
That's right.
And that is, for someone
planned obsolescence.
and for someone who believes that they're doing good in the world, telling them that when it came down to it, if you had a choice, what people in your position would do is the wrong thing, because they're incentivized to do it and they follow their incentives. They're really kind of like, I don't know, probably what Peter said hit the nail in the head, because that was probably the only time he exploded ever, and we talked about these things.
But I think another thing, right, and I don't read into this much, but my wife does, and when we talk about star signs, right, and people, I'm a Gemini, right, so there's two of them, right, she says the other side of you only comes out when you drink too much, right, and I know what it is, but I control it, right, so even when I drink, I try not to criticise other people out loud to their face and tell them what I think. Even though I'm not saying, not even say that I'm not perfect, but I do have a tendency to look at people and judge them, because I can't help myself when I drink.
See, I wonder if those two facets shouldn't just be integrated. Like, you should be more of the other one, and you're kind of like non-drunk life, and then it wouldn't be so extreme.
Well, I do, but I can't help myself. But the other thing is, I always check is my ego, right? And I notice ego is a huge problem.
Yeah.
And with me, I always check. Like, every time I do something, is it my ego? Why am I doing this? Is it my ego? Is it that third person? Or am I doing this because I want to do it? Or am I, I had an accident not too long ago, and I know straight after I flew off this motorbike and hit a tree, my ego took over, and I didn't even try to hold it back, because I was doing something I shouldn't have been doing. And I went straight away. And all the time I check it, and one time I let it go, and it did the worst for me. But I constantly ego I think is another huge issue.
What would you
say, Peter? What's the bigger problem in society? People being insecure to the point that insecurity drives ridiculously negative behavior, or people being so self-absorbed, self-obsessed that megalomania drives them to do bad stuff. I mean, out of the two, what do you say manifests itself into more bad shit?
Well, it's interesting because if you look at like the whole monetary value system, and a lot of things are based around earning money and whatnot and everything like that, you can go, well, okay, well, money's obviously a big problem. Like we're in this mess with psychiatry and pharmaceuticals and a lot of other places because of money. But really, why is money important? Money's important because it gives a status symbol and whatnot and stuff like that. So really, then you'd lead it back to insecurity. And I mean, a classic example would be, I don't value money. I just don't, because I see the damage it does the world.
But you see insecurity and ego in the same... Is it the same?
Insecurity and ego?
Yeah.
I think insecurity triggers ego. And a classic example is, like, I went around Australia doing all these talks and things and all that. And one of the things was I got a lot of comments about me, and some of them were they were comparing me to Freud and Jung, and one of the things was they said I'm one of the greatest psychoanalytical minds of our time. I didn't agree with that because I'm insecure as fuck, right? That's just a fact. I didn't agree with that, but when I was in a situation, I would say it often, and you would find I'll be sitting there and I'll be talking to someone about, you know, who I was and what I did and all that sort of thing. Now, that's fine. I have accomplished all these things and people have said all these things about me, but the taxi driver doesn't need to fucking know it. The bloke asking if I want fries with that at McDonald's does not need to know that shit, nor does he give a shit, you know?
You should hand over a bit of paper.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, this is pretty good. But I came across as arrogant, and in a way I was, but at the same time I didn't believe any of that shit. It was an overcompensation for my insecurity and how much low self-esteem I did. So all these talks, all this work I do, this is the thing. I do this work not because I believe in myself, not because I believe that I'm right, but because I see it work with other people. Now I attribute that to other people doing the work on themselves and finding a framework, and I do this work because I believe in others. That's the difference. So when I'm up there doing a talk, there's a different energy about me. It's not because I'm confident. People say I'm confident, and I'm not, and I'm working through that. That's something I'm working through. I'm confident, but I'm confident in their ability to work through it. I believe in the human spirit, and I've seen people do some amazing things. So when I'm up there, the energy I'm going off is the energy of the crowd in what they can do, you know. And
oh yeah, if the crowd's totally against
Peter,
I
mean,
That's why it's throw the negatives.
you know,
you fall down like a bucket of shit.
At this stage, you know, we might as well. Peter mentioned his talks and, you know, a lot of things about psychiatry, but we may actually delve a bit deeper into your story, and I don't know, like, where to start it. Perhaps just
we start it after a 5-minute intermission?
We could start it after a 5-minute intermission.
That would be awesome.
We could, like, yeah.
Yeah.
The lovely thing about non-live video is you can edit whatever the hell out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is ODD after like a how long a break? It wasn't quite 5 minutes, and it might be a few hours later.
One of the things my father did, which was the worst thing, was he's a sarcastic bastard.
Oh yeah.
And he could be relentless.
Oh, you didn't know whether he was for real or not.
He didn't.
Sally, you need to go.
Oh no, but he's nasty. The nastiness as well.
Am I in it?
That much forward. Yeah, you're in it. You're well.
He did hit once or twice, and that was usually a mistake because I was a big burly guy, and one it didn't hurt, but he was sarcastic, and that was used to.
My father tried to hit me once. I remember when I was about 16 and we had a blue, and he went to take a swing, and I knew he liked to close his eyes when he swung, so I punched him. I got him right in the face.
Oh.
And then because he's a big guy, right? So I thought, no, the one hit is enough, and then I ran. Because I didn't want to be a full-on. If I'd be outside, I'd be on the street, because he was pretty tough.
Yeah.
But he did take a swing, and I went, bang!
And what happened later was, how was he towards you?
My father has a good thing about, he doesn't carry grudges. That's it. You know, what was done, that's it. It's all over. And he never brings the past up. Never says,
cool.
See, I understand my dad. Like, I mean, yeah, he belted me a lot and all that sort of thing. And when I got older, I sort of understood it in a really good context because I was in a relationship. And I was stressed out, working a business, working 60 hours at Domino's a week and all that. And my missus was really, it was all sorry. Yeah, she was stressed out. We had this dog jumping up, and the dog was like biting me. And I'm just sitting there thinking, fuck, I can't handle this stress. My missus is crying because she's upset and doesn't want to go to work. And I'm going, oh, for fuck's sake. Anyway, I grabbed this dog. I just lost it and put the dog on the ground. Didn't squeeze its throat, but held it there by its throat. And just said, you fucking little cunt, I'll slit your fucking throat, right? And all of a sudden I stopped and just went, holy shit, I'm my dad. And I just fell and started crying. And all of a sudden I started seeing things in a different context. Like I started seeing Dad working 16 hours a day at work to try and bring home the money to feed us and pay for all my operations and stuff. I saw him walk in the door and get yelled at by Mum for what a little shit I'd been. And I saw him just lose his shit with me, just classic amygdala hijack, stressed out. He comes home wanting to fucking unwind and shit, and wanting to take it easy, and he's getting yelled at by the missus, you know, your son's been dead, you guys sort him out. So of course he'll get fired up, he's just being stirred up, he'll come and just lay into me, and then all of a sudden I saw this other thing that I never saw when I looked back at it, because I was too traumatised by what happened. But Dad'll come up afterwards and just say, I'm really sorry, you know, I feel really guilty about that, I shouldn't have lost my temper with you, I feel really bad about it. And all of a sudden my father, who I had this conflict with because I saw him as a very empathetic man and very supportive, but also very violent towards me in some aspects. And a lot of that was also because I took the blame for the other two, so I didn't do these things, so the beatings were a bit more severe up here because I did nothing wrong. But when I looked at it, I saw in that context, and I saw, here's my dad, who's doing the best he can to support us and work and do all these other things, and the last straw, and the guilt he would have carried from giving me those beatings that went on, and that's why he came afterwards and said, look, I'm really sorry and all that, and he still feels shit about it to this day. But I mean, he had an anger problem too, and stress and everything else going on that I didn't see growing up and didn't see as a young teen, definitely didn't see as a young adult, until I was in a very similar situation myself, and suddenly you start understanding it.
You subconsciously, I mean, when you're a young kid, you subconsciously absorb that stuff.
No, you don't see nothing when you're young.
No, you don't.
Subconsciously you would. When I was 16, we had one guy in our group, right, it was like, let's go steal some cars, let's go vandalise some shit, right?
Oh, that's not young.
Yeah, but even in the back of your mind, you know, that's wrong, right? I shouldn't do that. Because, you know, your parents bring you up on values, and you go, you know, that's not right. You don't break other people's shit. But if my old man didn't give us a good fucking belt across the back of the head, if you did something wrong, you know straight away you went, well, that was justified, because if he didn't do it, I would have gone that way for sure.
No. Like, I'm actually grateful.
Yeah.
I'm actually grateful, like, for the times I got beaten up by my dad, because once, like, I stole stuff, the other time I lied to him, the other time I said, hey, I'll be back in half an hour, I'm going to the beach, and I was back in, like, 7 hours later, and, you know, like...
2 days later, I did.
You know...
No,
these
but
things.
There's age variable.
Yeah.
And there is a good point to that. I mean, I don't agree with belting kids, but I agree with discipline. And I mean, I look at it, right, and I've got 3 brothers, and one of them, you'd say he's a sociopath. He's a total asshole. Now, here's what happened in the family, right? I didn't like seeing him get hit. At 3 years old, I was having an operation, and they said, geez, your son has a high pain tolerance. So I thought, oh, yeah, well, I'll take the punishment for him. So I did, because I love my brothers. I didn't like seeing them hit. One grew up and turned into a sociopath, a total fucking arsehole, because he never had to accept responsibility for anything, because I was sitting there taking the blame. The other one grew up, and I was his everything, until I lost my plot. And then he had nothing, and he ended up being on drugs for quite a long time, and he's only come off me in the last 2 years, and I'm really proud of him. He's built a lot of his life, but that whole framework was built, and my childlike understanding of that was do the right thing, take the beating for the other two, but I can see the damage it caused. Having said that, that would mean I got all these beatings for shit I didn't do. Now that fucked me up, but at the same time, I'm the best of them. You know, my values are really good, and a lot of the work I do, I can honestly say I've got a lot of those values from the person who beat the shit out of me, which was my dad. So it's like I turned out really good for what happened to me, and I think there is that element of having the discipline.
Because you're working towards your values.
Can we just officially kind of resume? We were going to talk to Peter about everything about
we're getting into the
Peter.
story anyway, so...
Alright, so, yeah, we're back. The intermission was very nice. We enjoyed it. We had some Italian dips and chips. Now, we were talking to Peter earlier, and then Peter did comment on various range of mental health issues in this psychiatric establishment, but his story itself is quite interesting, and I guess best that, where do we start from?
Shit, there's too much to go on in fucking this short amount of time, but I think the basis of it, as you would say, and I'll go through like one side version of it and then dissect it into what actually, when you look at it in relevance to my life. So basically at 16 I tried to kill my brother, and I was hearing voices. I started hearing them at 11, so I'll give you the mental illness side of it.
So you were hearing voices since 11 years of age, and
pretty much.
What was it like at 11? I mean...
it was quite good because I had no friends, so it was fine then, you know.
But was it your voice, or was it someone else's?
No, one of them, I didn't know whose voice it was, and actually I started probably hearing about 4, and I didn't know whose voices they were, but they seemed to be telling me I was a vigilante, and that I had to sort of stick up for people and all that. And so I began engaging in activities like beating the crap out of bullies at school.
Yeah, but don't, sorry, I've got to ask this. The voice that was telling you to do it, why didn't you just go, no, that's not, I'm not interested in that?
Because it was very persuasive. It told me it was my friend. It told me, that it was this. Told me I had all these special gifts and shit like that. I was destined for greatness. And it's that sort of persuasion that does do it. And I often find with people that when you actually are, like I can sit here and I can say to you, fucking kill Louisa, kill her now. And you go, no, that's stupid. But if I say that to you every day for the next week,
my hands did on him.
you might sit there and think, you know what? I just want this to shut up. That's a good
I
idea.
get rid of that. I don't have to hear it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But, sorry, she was
I haven't started talking yet. No, you already
But
started.
the point is, it happens often enough, and it does drill into your skull, And I didn't want to tell anyone because my version of crazy was fucking one flew over the cuckoo's nest, so I didn't want to end up there. And I already threatened to put me in a psychiatric institution anyway because of all my past traumas. And it seems like by the questions that it's going to be dissected into things. So the basic, just short version was of the mental illness side of it, and then I'll go to dissecting in relation to my life experience, was that at 16 I tried to kill my brother. I jumped on him with a knife, and they asked me, basically I went in the hospital and they said to me, look, why did you try and do it? And I said, because he pissed me off. And they said, can we ask a question? Because, like some of my colleagues piss him off and I don't try and kill him. I don't jump on him with a knife. So what actually made you do it? And I said, well, I was really angry. And they said, well, were you hearing voices? And my comment was, well, I was pretty freaked out. I mean, I just tried to kill my brother. I'd done some pretty violent shit. But that was by far the most violent with the person closest to me. And I thought maybe it'll be a good idea to actually say something. So I did. I said, yeah, I am hearing voices. And they said,
But isn't it interesting that they asked you, were you hearing voices? Isn't that, I find that interesting because obviously they've learnt from other people that, I'm hearing voices. It's not me, it's something telling me.
Question.
yeah, exactly. But when I got to it, and they said, well, look, did they tell you to kill your brother? And of course they did. They did say to kill him. So that was very relevant to the situation. But the next thing, they said, look, do you want to come in for a night? And I said, no way. And they go, well, we want you to try these meds. And I go, okay, all right, I'll try them. So I went home. That night, I heard voices telling me to kill myself, and I was living in the caravan and jumped out and friggin' slit my wrist. Next thing, I'm in the friggin' psych ward, and I
So
went...
how old were you when that...
16.
16 at that stage.
16.
So you start hearing them at 11, and it doesn't seem to be anything, in a sense, self-destructive to you. Most of the...
Yeah, it
I mean,
was.
would you say that most of it was the vigilante type of...
Yeah,
up
but
to
at the
bullies
same time,
and-
like, I was losing sleep. I was believing I was a vigilante. I didn't really tell so many people, but I was beating the crap out of bullies in school. And I mean, I have nightmares about some of the things I did to those kids. Because as a kid, fair enough, you get in these things, it's all cool to be violent and shit and be angry and all that and be the toughest. But when you look back with an adult's understanding, I mean, I had people up by their throat by one hand. And I was watching the life drain out of them. And I would let them drop. Now, fair enough, they could have fucking died. I look back at that now and I have nightmares and flashbacks about what could have happened. Could have died, could have choked to death, could have hit the back of the locker with their head and they're dead. And it's like, it was really a case of in that, I was a vigilante, I was fighting them.
Yeah, but did everyone take a wide step when you come walking down?
Yeah, very much so. But I didn't mind because I was sticking up for people. That was my belief system at that stage. And I mean, yeah, granted, I picked someone up by the throat and threw them against a locker, but at the same time, they probably don't deserve that for calling some chick fat. I mean, that's a bit extreme. Justify we use
You're regular
support.
superhero.
But it's just
I don't know, the
the same way.
chicks of the world might think otherwise, Peter.
No,
Yeah.
Maybe if you did it to
Honestly-
their parents.
Honestly, I hate the term fat. It's a framework on what society says is acceptable weight, and it does in no way define who someone is.
Somebody
But
keeps telling me I'm fat. Billy's white.
Well, you have got a belly.
Yeah.
That's food, that's not alcohol.
there you go.
But these are sporting
But
kind
yeah,
of
and like,
biological.
the other thing I was
Yeah.
doing was I got very good at hacking, and I used to pretend to be like a teenage girl on the internet, like 12, and when people would ask for a naked picture.
Did you wear a dress while you were typing?
No, but I should have. That would have denoted there was something wrong, and I would have ended up in the psych ward before 16. But I was up all night
And
doing
then
that.
issues would have been resolved.
And what would you
Did
do?
you get them to meet at the park and smash the crap out of them? Or?
No, fuck no. What I'll do is I'll actually attach a virus to it. Send this photo, and it'll be like a donkey's ass or someone going like that.
That's great,
And it'll just
though.
fuck up their computer.
That's awesome.
Now that was fun because that was working really well. I felt really good about myself doing that shit.
That was fine.
At the same time, it didn't actually
And-
cause any problem on the
like-
radar.
Peter, this is kind of what I want to get to the bottom of. You're okay. You start hearing voices at 11. Predominantly, it's related to being a vigilante and standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves.
That's a great
But
Overcompensation for insecurity.
what is the evolution? Like, how do the voices change from 11 to 16?
I want to know when you started wearing a cape.
I got that for you, right? Seriously, check this out, right? So, at about 14, my parents used to wake up and find me on the pool table with a half a pool cue and a Sesame Street wrapped around my head. Sheet. Now, what was happening was I was going out looking for drug dealers at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was 14. And they used to find me. This went on until I was about 16.
Oh, wow.
But I used to, every vigilante needs a costume. This was my framework. So I did this Sesame Street sheet that they used to cover the printer and the other computer with, and I would wrap it around my head in a turban and grab a sawn-off pool cue. I was fucking Turban Man, straight out. That was it. And I would go around the street at 3 o'clock in the morning, go, hold 2 goats there. No shit, I was just totally fucking lost in it. And they would wake up, the door would be swinging wide open at 7:30 in the morning, and I'll be lying on the pool table like this, with the pool cue and a Sesame Street sheet wrapped around my head.
Turban girl.
Why, you ever
I'm in Upper Park. I'm far enough away.
I'm like so glad. I'm so glad that no one saw me, because if I had seen myself, I would have kicked the shit out of me.
Melton, you have to do a lot of crime out in Melton, mate.
But the funny thing was, and Dad's still got the sheet. And when I tell this story, Dad reckons he's going to stand up at my wedding and actually give that sheet as a present and tell that story. I figure I was a little shit, so he's got the right to do that. Now, I renounced. I'm the artist formerly known as Turban Man, but that's. But I found out like a lot of that was an overcompensation for insecurity. I had a need to feel important, and what makes you feel more important for wrongs done to you by being a vigilante, standing up for stuff.
Was the security and importance related?
Huh?
Security and importance are related.
Yeah, I think to some extent they were, and I guess like also because I've got control stuff. I had very little control of my life. Like if you go back into it, since we seem to be dissecting it and not getting to the end of the mental illness thing, a lot of it was my history was bloody phones. My history was I have a history of basically when I was born, 12 hours old, I was born with an imperfect anus, which meant I didn't actually have an arsehole. Good, because I can't be accused of being one, but I still am.
I was going to say I'm not going to laugh, but I already did.
But yeah, that's alright, I don't care. It's a shit life, you gotta have a laugh. Which is kind of funny, because that leads me to the next thing.
You're never going to be gay, were you?
Well, that's it. That's funny you said that. When I was thinking Monty Python, Dad blamed himself. Because him and his uncle...
Back on track!
My dad and the uncle were actually out there, and when I was being born, they're still on a Monty Python skit going, no poofters, no poofters. And I come out, but no shit, Dad blames himself.
And maybe he should, he made it.
But,
Too much.
That's like...
I think your dad's got some problems.
Yeah, don't we all? But
He comes forward and says he thinks he does.
But the end result is, right, that there's a lot of operations. I ended up with colostomy, and then they shut that, and I had incontinence through most of my childhood life, so I was bullied until year 7, when I started punching the shit out of people. And, I mean, a lot of that stuff happened there. My brother was a narcissist at, between the ages of 6 and 8. I can't remember the exact detail. I think I was about 7-ish, because that's between 6 and 8.
Did your brothers have any issues?
Fuck yeah, who doesn't?
His brother's a sociopath.
Oh, yeah, I mean, now, they have any...
My brother's still a sociopath. My younger brother's really good.
Did they have issues when they were kids?
Really good at what?
My little brother had a drug issue.
Staying under the radar.
He had depression.
No, even, I'm talking back when they were 12, 10, something like that. They had issues back then?
My little brother had depression at some stage. And the older brother had a fucking host of issues since God knows when. So mental issues or psychological, yeah. But and some of my trauma is actually my brother. The things he did to me growing up. Also, as I was getting back to it, between 7 years old, I was actually raped. And there was a lot of stuff there that happened. It was pretty messed up.
I don't want to talk about those issues here and now. We've got so much.
As Peter's story, Louise. Just handle it.
It's relevant.
No, I'm happy to handle it. I'm just saying, maybe we'll get an invite.
This is the thing. One of the things, she just triggered me right then. See, one of my things with this is because I was raped, I feel guilty about any desires I have, and I have a lot of stuff with my sexual thing. One of the things in dealing with that was telling my family about being raped. My parents responded, because the deal was that therapist said if we talk about it and you tell your family and they tell you it wasn't your fault, which is quite common when this stuff happens, you'll feel okay with it. So Dad and Mum were like, well, fuck, this is our fault. We should have been more protective.
Yeah, but when you're
you know?
7, you
I
don't
know.
know what rape is.
Well, I didn't tell him until I was 28. I repressed the memory until I was 28. I repressed it until I was 28. I knew
So
I was
you didn't
different.
even
No, I thought I was gay, honestly, because I was so not comfortable with sex. I was so not open about anything. If anyone was talking, normal guys talk about, oh, fuck, do you see that shit, Sheila's tits and stuff like that. I was so not into that, and I also changed the topic of conversation around sex because I felt so guilty about it. My desire.
Could just be Anglican.
No.
Sorry.
any could be, but let's just have a shot at religion.
I don't get that. And I take offence because it started with angle and my people were angles.
But yeah, like so normal
Angles.
childhood growing
Angles,
up
yeah.
things did affect me, and like when I hit
Anglo-Saxon.
when I hit puberty and a lot of the changes that happened, I kind of forced them down and felt guilty about them. So masturbation, normal part of puberty, I felt guilty about and ashamed about, so that really fucked me up. Anyway, but when I actually remembered this at 28, it fucking TKO'd me. But
Did you go and kill that guy?
no, I didn't. But at 28, I was in therapy for it, and I'm dealing with it. And one of the things the therapist said was talk to your family about it. So mum and dad were like, "Oh fuck, it's our fault." We were such bad parents, and that didn't help. My little brother was good. He'd worked through a lot of his drug issue, and he just said, in a way, he said it really nice. He said, "Look, I want to cut you off there," and he said, "It's not because I don't care. It's because I really care." And he said, if I hear about this, if I can get where this is going, if I find out what's happened, I'm going to go fuck someone up. And he said that I'm sort of trying to get my life together. I don't want to end up in prison, and I can guarantee that will happen. So I'm not shutting you off because I don't care. I will say it's not.
You didn't want to know who it was. Is that where you're
He just
going?
didn't want to talk about it because it was too sensitive for him that someone had done that to me, and he was very anger-driven like myself, so he was liable to just go off and kill someone, and he knew it. And he wanted to keep himself safe, so his way of doing it was quite nice. He said, "Look, I don't want to hear too much about it, but I want to say it's not your fault, and I understand that." And he said the reason I don't want to hear too much about it is because I will get angry and I will go and do something and I'll end up in prison because I care about you.
So Peter,
older brother, I'm just getting to this point. Older brother actually said that it didn't happen. It's basically me covering up the fact I'm gay. And gave me a whole heap of shit about it, made fun of me in front of his friends, and pretty much denied it happened. So when you shut me
You're on
down
the
like
list,
that,
mate. Put him on the list.
huh?
List of people you're going to hurt later on.
I tried to kill him, but so many times. But at the end result, so that's why that triggered me. I'm just bringing it up because of the relevance of the trigger.
No, I like triggering people. Like Sally likes to use me as a stick to poke people sometimes.
Are you blaming me for that now?
No. It's my personality.
Don't trigger me too much because I'll just.
No. I like that kind of engagement.
You can't take her on.
No, you can. I love the challenge. That sort of chess. Verbal, physical is all
That's the interesting thing.
beautiful.
Like, I look back recently in my life and like to think I had control over everything. I could have made decisions that changed stuff. The one thing I couldn't is the rape because that was just unexpected. But then afterwards, like for the next 10 years, I learned 7 styles of martial arts. So yeah, good luck with that. Just because I wanted to protect myself. So that's a change I made afterwards.
Call of champion.
But getting back to the
No, I
explanation
wasn't a
of the voices
champion. I
and
didn't.
stuff.
I
can
didn't
go
win a
through. I mean,
medal.
there's too
I
much
jumped on
to
my
go
head.
into in this one thing. But if we go into it, there's a lot of things there. I was over-medicated by the system. I was told I had no hope at recovery. Homicidal tendencies. They tried.
Oh, sorry. Was that through medication? Were you on medication when you started hearing noises?
No, I wasn't. No. it was-
Oh, okay.
This is the thing.
So
and this is-
the thing that I'm trying to piece together, though, I mean, we've talked about the relationship with the brothers and their lives, and even a little bit about parents and the rape and how that affected you. But that happened at 7. You suppressed it, but you start hearing voices at 11. So obviously there is some level of subconscious tensions and bad events building up until they're bubbling to the surface through voices.
Yeah, and I can get into that, but this is sort of where I was leading with it. But a lot of it, and I'll try and give you the simplified version, I usually do it in like voice profiling, 3 voices, and voice profiling's by, I think Dirk Austin's did it from Hearing Voices Network. It's about profiling where your voices relate to things. So if I go through 3 of my voices, I heard 29, like over time, and I don't hear any now. I managed to cure myself. But
Did you keep lists of them?
huh? Yeah.
Did you
That's-
recorded
yeah, I did.
things?
That is where we want to arrive in like half
Yeah,
an
and that's
hour.
where I'm sort of getting there. But a lot of it, like I say to people, they're relating to suppressed emotions. I mean, I started looking at this stuff, and Freud and Jung, Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, they actually heard voices, and they commented that it was like dreaming while awake. I found it interesting that they did a lot of work around dream interpretation, but never fucking actually applied it to voices and visions and stuff like that. So I started doing that because it just seemed to make sense. And like I used to see the walls dripping blood, the roofs dripping blood, and blood in my cups and blood in the showers, and I would sit there and just be freaked out. And
It's not just voices.
no, I used to see visions and shit. I still see visions. Yeah, I still see hallucinations.
Peter got stabbed.
Yeah,
and he felt
I got
it,
stabbed by
but-
my hallucinations, and I feel it. And I'm sort of going into this, but if you look at blood in a dream, it means emotional hurt,
Fully
you know?
harsher.
So I started dissecting a lot of my experiences dealing with that emotional hurt. That disappeared. I haven't seen that since. Same with the voices. I mean, I had one that was called Brother's Keeper, and for some reason I just fucking did not pick up it was my brother. Just didn't pick it up. The system told me they weren't real, so that's what I believed. But it made so much sense, because it sounds like him.
Do you think of everything when you have visions? Is this all from the head, or is this a gut feeling?
No, it's external.
Do you ever think from the gut?
No.
No, you never have a gut feeling about something? No. So your head tells you one thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Your head tells you one thing and your gut says no. It's all bullshit.
Yeah.
Don't go with down there.
Yeah.
You don't get that?
With the visions or...
No, I mean as in general. Oh, look, I heard something and you go, well,
in general,
that was here,
yep,
right?
Yep.
The gut tells me that it's not here. The gut feeling says to you that that's all bullshit. Don't go on. Don't listen to yourself.
Brain and heart connection is more important than the gut reaction.
In general, about
situations,
situations, but in this, as far as I knew, it was quite real to me.
So
I find
what I wanted to sort of try to get into is
Okay, you're kicking.
I thought that was deliberate.
no. Like the mindset. Like obviously you have a strategic.
now.
Yo,
What?
this is like
Didn't we
this
say
is like
it's
what a teacher does in
disobedience?
class. I tap the board and I look.
Yeah, the students,
One by one.
the students aren't drinking
No,
wine.
we know.
And I know it doesn't really work.
I love
with
teachers.
adults.
It's great. Your methods you have for controlling people is
But
fantastic.
it's terrible, actually.
Controlling them and drawing the best from them. That's what we all need for each
A lot of
other.
aspects of it are not.
participation.
A lot of aspects of it are like
Anyway,
I'm against it. It's just like crowd control. But where I'm trying to like,
Crowd control.
So- you've framed a lot of this stuff. But at what stage, right, do you start developing a strategic mindset of saying, okay, I'm seeing visions, I'm hearing voices. I want to be more in control of my life. Now, what do I do next? I mean, at what stage does this strategic, constructive mindset dawn on you?
I think it was when I realised I could do something about the situation. Like, I look back and see that I'd changed, like, even within the mental illness framework that I was living in, I had moved forward a lot. I hadn't been in the hospital in 8 years, and I had lowered my medication. I think what also helped was being over-medicated until I collapsed and started convulsing, and then they took me off of it then and said, get the fuck out of the system, you've spent too much time. Granted, I told them I didn't hear voices at that point, and coming off that level of sedation helped, because I started thinking, I actually hid this from 11 till 16, and I did alright, no one knew. So maybe I can actually do that. So I told people I didn't hear them anymore. And then I started realising that a lot of what was happening, even within the mental illness framework, if it was biological, and I don't believe it's biological anymore, there must be some flip that actually switches it. Because why would I have, times when things were good and times when things were bad? If it was a biological imbalance or something, it'll be permanent, it'll be all the time,
Yeah,
and it'll just be
sense.
sporadically. They also said that it was based on stresses. Like, one of the things they said is I couldn't handle too much stress. So what was it about stress that was actually triggering it?
Isn't that a chemical thing?
Yeah, but
so.
at the same time, like, what one person perceives as a stressful situation is not.
Yeah, some people don't.
Yeah, and they said environment has a lot to do with it. And I thought, well, fuck. If environment has a lot to do with it, then it's not biological. And they also said something along the lines of, they said distraction works well. And I thought, why does fucking distraction work well if it's a biological chemical imbalance? That makes no sense.
You probably should have started following football or something.
No,
That's a distraction.
But the end result was, that's when I started looking at it and working out that it might not be, or at least there might be some sort of like pathway or something that follows to kick it over, and I started recording a lot of my experiences when I was in these states that I started calling reality lapsing. I used to get really stressed out when I was hallucinating and hearing things, but then I worked out, wait, I actually live in two realities, and that freaks me out. But people tend to be okay with whatever's happening to them. Like, you can have people in Africa and they're in a country where there's not much food and there's a lot of other stuff going on, and you know what? they're cool with that. That's their framework. They're okay. There's a lot of fucking other shit going on there, and they function with it a lot better than most, you know?
Yeah, put someone like us in that situation.
Yeah, and we'll be fucked and put them in this situation, and they'll have trouble adapting, you know? I mean, they often do quite well.
A lot of them are in this situation.
Yeah, exactly.
After hearing what you've had to say, mental illness, I have no concept of mental illness, but I did suffer from depression for 2 years, and I couldn't talk to anyone about it. And when I did talk to someone about it, which was my father, who I thought was pretty level-headed, he pretty much said to me, "What the fuck's wrong with you? I mean, you fucking got it all right. What's wrong with you?" And I went, "That's not the answer I wanted." You know what I mean? And I couldn't figure out why I was depressed. It kept, it was like a circle. You just go, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And then you drive yourself down further. And then I watched some show on SBS. I can't remember. It was about some poor prick in some shithole country living scavenging through the garbage looking for food, struggling. And I went, "What the fuck have you got to whinge about? You're not him. You're you. You live in a society. You're eating. You got to. You drive. You're doing all right." And then when I saw his life, and I went, "There's nothing fucking wrong with you." And that's what kicked me out of it.
But that's the framework, yeah.
That was the only thing. Once I saw that, I went, "Hey, you're not like him, and he's not depressed. He's not depressed, and he's living like that, and you're depressed because you live like this." You're a fucking idiot.
Depression
But
becomes...
maybe he had something else. Maybe he had
human imagination, I would say, is exceedingly powerful. I mean, at least in my life,
affirmations.
I have been in funny situations where really small things make me really upset, and like I'm actually aware to the point of like, this is so funny. Like if somebody else was going through this, I'd be making fun of them like crazy, and it doesn't happen often enough, but like, this is ridiculous. But it just goes to show that you can, in your own mind, create a reality, a world, a context where your relationship to everything else is such that, you are not good enough, inferior, or an asshole or something.
But don't you find don't you find that you get caught in a circle? Like, with depression, which I faced a little bit of. I'm not going to say it was massive. I wasn't thinking of killing myself. I mean, I probably thought about it once. Once, maybe.
I did twice.
No, well, I got to the point where the problem is it kept coming around full loop, and it would build on itself. You were building a tower of depression. Then you're going... And then when I saw that, I went, he doesn't look depressed, looking through that garbage. He's smiling while he's eating some 6-week-old sandwich. And here I am going, I live in Australia, I have a good life, I eat and do well. And then it just disappeared. It went just as quick as it came, it went.
Part of what clinical depression is that you're feeling bad when there's no reason. That's why it is such a pernicious and insidious thing. Because you can sit there and say, I've got no reason for feeling depressed. And you go, but I am feeling depressed. And this is, because I have bipolar, and so I suffer through that at various times. And that's the really insidious thing about depression. There's no reason for when you have real depression,
you can't figure out why.
Exactly.
But the thing is, you seem to be building a castle of depression. You're not
exactly.
You're not just spinning in one circle. It's getting worse, and you're going.
That's what's called the cycle of depression, and you've got to break it some way, one way or another.
And it sounds like
funny.
that for you was a mental.
When I saw that, and then he was smiling, eating that, and I'm going, I wouldn't be smiling at that. I'd be fucking more depressed. Why am I depressed?
Yeah.
That was it.
And but that happens for a lot of people. And so a lot of people have these periods of depression that start for no reason, and they're totally baffled about it, but because they haven't tried the different things of breaking it. And the thing is, people say, "Oh, go out for a walk." The thing is, you don't feel like going out for a walk.
Yeah. But I find it funny how it builds on itself. It builds. It's like anger. You know when you get angry and then it just
you get into a pit of depression. That's why it's a pit.
Yeah, it just keeps.
Hey Peter,
it
there's
builds
a
on
whiteboard. You could do your emotions diagram.
I will actually. Can we just take a 5-minute break again?
Peter's got a great whiteboard diagram of the brain.
We'll just take the break.
And how emotions work.
Okay. So what do we need to go?
I'll lead into it. Pope, can you just that far to the... Yeah, done. Excellent. Everyone's chair is stable. The board is visible. The reason why I made this on the screen is because there was a reflection on the screen there, so I want to make the screen black.
Nice.
Alright. So, yeah. I mean, Peter was going to explain some of the... whatever cause and effect relationships behind his journey and what happened to him. So like, by all means, go for it.
Alright, cool. Well, I'll just run through the 3 voices I heard and how they're relevant to things, because I want to sort of wind up on that. Otherwise, it just leaves it out there that I was hearing voices and there was no reason for them. And I did hear 29, but I'll go through 3 of the main ones. One was actually called Brother's Keeper. That's what it used to refer to itself. And that was actually used to say really nasty things to me and rubbish me for everything. It turned out that was my brother. I mean, my brother did a lot of that stuff, and that voice, in dialoguing with it and talking to it and working it out and thinking about it, it was an overcompensation, because my brother was a total asshole to me, and this voice was created to replace that. Like, it was trying to be the bigger brother I never had, but the only example I had was my real bigger brother. So when I started giving examples of that and how to be a good big brother, that's what it did. There was another voice that was called the Judger, and it used to call me a pedophile and a rapist. And I couldn't understand what was going on. I later found out that was the voice of my abuser, and it was commenting things I felt about myself because of my abuse. Another one, who was also a hallucination, was called Killer Me. And when I didn't realise at the time that whenever I got angry, he would rock up and say I was going to kill people and hold severed heads of my loved ones and say I was a killer and that's all I was meant to be. And when I worked out what he was trying to do was get me to walk away using scare tactics. So, like, this is what you're capable of. And one day I just said to him, look, why don't you just say, dude, walk away? And he began doing that and was quite helpful at helping me control my anger until I got control of it.
So, which point did you start, like, negotiating with the voices in your head, as opposed to trying to ignore them, which I presume is what the system more or less encourages?
Yeah. I think the hearing voice note had a lot to do with it. Like, I didn't actually attend many classes, or I was running a group before I was doing one, and granted, I'm not really associated with them anymore due to reasons and misunderstandings, but at the same time, their framework was talking to voices. So I began doing that and trying to figure it out. I was already starting to figure out they were a compensation for something, or they're relevant to something in my life. But I started figuring it out more by talking to them instead of shutting them down and things like that. So that helped a lot. But it didn't make sense as to why I tried to kill my brother, unless, because I couldn't understand how the voices could control me. So I looked at that, and this is what I reckon happened. It happens with all humans, and this is why I like this, because it explains everything about why we do things, to me anyway. So if you've got a heightened emotion, and we'll put it down to any emotion, anger's the easiest one to deal with, and that's the one I had a good understanding of, but it happens with all emotions. Now, this is based on triune brain theory and a couple other theories pulled together, and a lot of my own work too. But triune brain theory states that we have 3 layers of the brain. They've just expanded upon each other over evolution, time and function as the one brain. So we have the reptilian part, and that controls, like, sex drive. Reptilian controls the need for water, food, drink, all that sort of primitive stuff. You've got the mammalian part, which controls sex drive and your fight or flight that everyone's heard about. Then you've got the neocortex, which controls rational thinking. Rational thinking is really handy. The thing is, when you do enter amygdala hijack or fight or flight mechanism, there's a part called the amygdala. Now, that has the capacity to cut off the neocortex and actually shut down rational thinking. And this will be evident if you've ever been in an argument with someone and then had to come back later and say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, I was just angry. And when we do get in an argument, we do fire bullets, either emotional or physical. We'll throw punches or we'll fire bullets. If you've ever heard your parents say something like, I wish you'd never been born, or you've ever said to your parents, I fucking hate you and wish I'd never been born, or wish you were dead, who says that? That's wrong. No one says that to parents or anything. And usually when you calm down, you come back and say stuff. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, I was just angry. And it's really, really evident that you can't solve an argument when you're angry, because you lose the ability to think rationally.
So it's more or less you're saying a proven scientific fact that, okay, when you're angry, you have a level of certain, hormones or a certain frequency of your brain activity. But anyway, in a state of anger, you lose not just focus on your higher order thinking, you lose the ability to think.
Yeah, very much. To think rationally about a situation. And it's called an amygdala hijack. The amygdala will hijack the neocortex. Now, when you say scientific, there's so much scientific evidence out there, but it's just a bunch of theories. I tend to go with what works, because, we all believe psychiatry and pharmaceuticals was the way to go, and it's only in the last 10, 20 years it's coming out. Hang on, there might be a problem here. So I tend to look at it, the information is subject to change and things like that. So I don't like to put anything out there as definitive or scientific, even if there's evidential proof. But yeah, that's what happens. And in those states, and it happens with not just that, but any emotions, fear, anything like that, where you do respond away. Even with happiness and like love and euphoria, you can do some pretty shitty things. You know, you can do some pretty crazy things when you're in love. Like you can not see things straight down the line and just put up with a relationship that's bad for you. And I did it in my past relationship because I was in love and I was blinded to all the stuff that was going on around me affecting me because of that heightened emotional state. And when you do it, you get to these levels, and with anger it's a classic thing, like I get to 3, right? And at 3 you're starting to think, this person doesn't understand what I'm talking about, they don't get it, they're being a prick, you know, and stuff like that. You're having those thoughts, you know. Then you get to 4, and you might be thinking, you know what, I'm going to give them a fucking piece of my mind, I'm going to tell them what for. Like all the times they did this to me, all the times they did that, they just don't get it. They've done this so many times, I've got to give them a piece of my mind. And at 5, you might be sitting there actually going and speaking to them, going, you know what, you shouldn't have done that. You know, you try and communicate to solve the problem, and communication, I honestly believe, will solve a lot of the problems, but not when you're heightened emotionally and not thinking rationally, and your thinking was that before. So you go and sit there and you go like, you know what, I was really pissed off when you did this, why did you do that? Or you might phrase it, you did this to fucking piss me off, didn't you, or something like that. And they're going, well, no, I didn't. And they're feeling attacked, which is effectively what you're doing by your communication style. So they might be triggered and say something. The next thing you get into like 7 or 8, and you're going, you know what, fuck you don't fucking belong here, get the fuck out, this is bullshit. And by the time you get to like 10, and this is where I got to quite often, I was grabbing people by the throat, fucking trying to kill them, you know. And a lot of it was based on not thinking rationally. Now, I always tell people that I didn't have control that time when I was on my brother with a knife. I lost control.
If I ask you
Control of what?
10 minutes before, I was in control. I could have walked away and it wouldn't have led to that.
But let me ask you a question. I mean, you have, say, the amygdala hijack. So you have, essentially, neocortex is cut off. But then you have mammalian and reptilian, which are, aren't they, to some extent, sort of different? I mean, if your thinking is centered on mammalian as opposed to the reptilian. So let's say, in that anger situation, you're thinking more with mammalian than reptilian,
very
I
much
presume,
so.
because it's an emotion. It's
Very
not,
much so, yeah.
It's not just it's not an automatic survival reflex.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, very much so. But it's also can be based on survival. And I've done a lot of work around amygdala imprints. And I believe when something happens, because the subconscious and unconscious record things as pictures, that our amygdala stores an imprint. And there's some research at the moment showing that people's amygdalas are enlarged through trauma. So that fits in very well with what I say about amygdala imprints. So, for example, if we're sitting here talking and a ball comes through this window and hits you in the back of the head, right? That'll hurt. And your brain will store an imprint of everything around you, a picture. Later on, 2 weeks from now, we might try and do the podcast again because you've been hit in the head and you know you need time to do that, and we'll redo it. You'll find yourself getting very anxious, very agitated for no apparent reason, you know, but it's the brain adapting. I always say it's survival and adaptation because the brain says, this happened here and it hurt, and you didn't express the right appropriate levels of whatever you needed to survive. So the next thing, it's going to overexpress those chemicals. So you'll find you're automatically angry, anxious, and maybe frightened and looking around and stuff.
In the specific situation.
In the specific situation, because in the past it's hurt. The brain is geared for adaptation. The brain is geared for survival. So everything is about survival, I feel, anyway. And it happens with all emotions. The more trauma you have, I think the more imprints you have. So therefore you have more triggers, and people talk often about triggers, and that's what it's about. Now these voices are separate. They were commenting on my emotional state, so they were saying killing, which is very much like, I always say it's like dreaming while awake, and it's metaphorical for suppressed emotion. So they were commenting that, you know, if you kill someone in a dream, it's suppressed anger. And I'm often finding that the actions and the voices were two separate things. They were just commenting like visions. They were two separate things to the fear and anxiety they created in me. And what made me lose control was my emotions and the heightened level of them. Once I started gaining control of them, it was able to change the situation because I could hear things and see things that were really should scare the shit out of me and weren't.
To elaborate on this a little more, effectively the presence of, say, voices speaking to you in your daily life, would you say that it was higher at states where you were emotional, so angry, stressed, Yeah, it was higher at those times than it was while you would have been whatever, problem solving or reading a book or an intellectual.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and like I mean, sometimes there were times where I will be doing stuff and like I'll be researching or looking at computer programming, and they'll jump in and tell me that, you know, you're fucked up, you can't do this right, blah blah blah. I mean, but my life taught me that those are feelings I have about myself, and I would often find that when I was reading or doing something, I was getting to a point and I might have trouble grasping the concept, and that came in automatically. So a lot of that stuff there was representing how I felt about myself, and I found that every situation, everything the voices were saying, I could relate back to something in my life, and I actually did write a book on this.
This is fascinating.
So,
because it is that, I would say, I was talking to a psychiatrist in our school just this week, and he said something basically that amounts to research shows that perseverance that even the youngest the kids have is the biggest indicator of future success. And just imagine if there is a mechanism, a subconscious mechanism set up for precisely the situation where you're trying to persevere, where you're grappling with something difficult, that, and the second you get stuck, it's the self-sabotage of kicks in. I mean, you know, there you go, right there, you're inflicting maximum damage on yourself in that situation. It seems like a very, very kind of opportune time to mess yourself up.
It does, and we also have these coping mechanisms we fall into. And me and my fiance wrote a theory on low self-esteem. Often we feel like low self-esteem, the classic example is you're in an abusive environment, you're copping it for all this stuff, you're being called all these names, these terrible things are happening to you, and you can't understand why these people are doing this to you, because you haven't done anything to them. You don't understand as a young kid that they've got their own problems, or you don't understand that they've got their own problems, so you internalise that, and it hurts a lot. But the brain, geared for adaptation, creates a framework where it is your fault, where you are all these things they're calling you, because it hurts less than actually looking at the fact that these people are doing it, so it takes a lesser of two hurts. Unfortunately, that framework sticks all through life, and you end up actually self-sabotaging and doing things with low self-esteem to fulfill that framework, keep that in play, because if that framework's in play, it keeps you safe from the fact that you were bullied by your old man or your old lady, or something was happening for no apparent reason except they have problems. And classic example is a girl gets bullied at school, called a slut, whatever, you know, all these things are happening, gets called fat, all these terrible things. You will find that, or gets called stupid, and this is actually in the article, where there's a situation where there was someone who was called stupid, it's like all these terrible things, and it really hurt them, and they spent many nights crying and all that. Then they get up and go to school, and they hear someone saying, well, that was a stupid thing to do, and they jump in and say, did you actually call my name? And they go, no. Well, I heard the word stupid, and I thought you called me. And everyone laughed, including the girl, and it's a much better situation than her being teased and bullied, and then you find her later on and she's actually sleeping around and doing all these things to fulfill this framework, because it kept us safe from the bullying. It was easier to believe that shit, because it hurt less, than actually look at the fact and go, well, no, these people are saying stuff about me, you know, that for hurtful reasons. So your brain adapts, takes a lesser of two hurts.
I'd just like to ask if you've ever tried to come to some sort of rapport or accommodation with your voices, because I've heard of people having quite a bit of success with some people having success with becoming friendly.
Yeah, that's related to our Hearing Voices network.
So I have looked that up.
Did you say
I have,
you
and I
kept
do.
4 or something?
Huh? I had 29. Yeah, I did, and I did a lot of voice dialoguing, and I did a lot of work for the Hearing Voice movement, and I did do some of that stuff with voice dialoguing, and creating boundaries and all that sort of stuff, and that does make a difference. And I really think, I mean, I think honestly I've done a lot for the Hearing Voices network and changed it, because now it's going on to emotional. I don't do stuff with them, but I see that what they've got, the framework, even without my stuff, works quite well, changing the relationship, talking to them. I have no dispute with that in theory, that method, because it does work so well. I just personally don't believe in the voice dialoguing in some sense. They talk about voice dialoguing being disassociated states of the self, whereas they say that you have different sides of the self, and every time you flip, something can actually, you're flipping between a state. Through trauma they can split off, and that's where the voices come from. I personally think voice dialoguing works because it allows you to access your subconscious. I don't agree with disassociated states of the self. I think it's like dreaming while awake, so they're coming from the subconscious. Same with dissociative identity disorder. I don't think they're multiple personalities. I don't think they're splits. I think it's a bit like if you say sleep paralysis, people get up, or there's states where people are asleep and they get up and walk around. And me and my fiance are in the process of proving this now with brain scans of the different states of the brain while asleep and while in states of psychotic and bipolar and shit like that, manic. But I tend to short circuit that. I don't do much voice dialogue with other people, and I don't hear voices anymore. I killed myself. We just sort of look at re-establishing the emotions and getting them in touch and understanding them in relation to experiences, because it's almost like once you've justified someone's right to feel, and with voices I say a lot of it's suppressed emotions.
Yeah.
If I... keep going.
Yeah, as I keep interrupting you, but I was just going to speculate on something. I mean, would you say that this hearing voices would be, say, more common to a sort of Western world 20th to 21st century Anglo-Saxon culture than it is to, I don't know, Pacific Islanders or Africans or cultures that are, in a sense, way, way, way more expressive? Because, I mean, coming from, say, an Eastern European background, Bosnian, I mean, you could look at, we're in Melbourne, lots of Greeks, lots of Italians. In fact, what you feel, it's not that you express, you over-express. If a friend pisses you off or is late, it's like, you son of a bitch, you show up late again, I'll kick you out of my house. Like, whereas, and it's like every little thing, even with my parents, in the house, you could say, oh, they were fighting a lot, but the truth is, they were never intensely angry with one another. I've seen that once in my entire life. Never. It's more like they're ironing out the details, and once any type of emotion pops up, out it comes. Yeah. And, it's clear. It's kind of like cleaning the slate all the time. Now, we live in a culture, and this British stiff upper lip, where you don't do that. You accumulate and accumulate and accumulate, and quite possibly what you say is that it's over accumulation of suppressed emotion that eventually the voice is simply the shape it takes as it boils up out of
I think so,
conscious.
and I think also in relation to, like the rape thing, like I couldn't talk about that with anyone because the blood would kill my family, so I didn't, and I repressed that memory. But that's all those feelings associated with such a terrible experience I pushed down. All the feelings associated with, like, I've had over 28 operations on my body. I shouldn't be here now. It's a miracle that I am and as healthy as I am. But all those times I was getting wheeled into surgery, I pushed it all down because I could see my parents upset. So I would joke around before going into surgery. Here's me, a scared shitless little kid, going into surgery, and I'll be joking, trying to make my parents laugh because I could see they had enough shit on their plate. They didn't need to worry about dealing with what I was going through. Same with a lot of the stuff that happened to me. I just pushed it down because it was easier for me to push down than affect people around me. And eventually all that stuff pushed down manifested in another way. Because it has to. And, I mean, they say there's a thing called at the moment saying Human Gibbons Project. And what they say is that dreams are the fulfillment of unexpressed emotional states. I think that's accurate. And I also think that when you go through trauma, you have more emotions to push down and therefore have more emotions to express in the dreamlike state. Hence, I dream while I'm awake because I have that much more there, and I still see visions and things, but I tend to look at them. Like the other night I was looking at snakes on the roof and I'm thinking, oh shit, and I just sat there and Mrs. goes to me, what are you looking at? And I go, snakes. She goes, why are you looking at snakes? And I said, they're pretty. And she goes, okay. And I go, oh, look at the green one. And she goes, are you going to actually dissect that and work out what it's in relation to? And I go, but I don't want to get rid of the green one. And she goes, why don't you want to get rid of the green one? And I go, because it's fucking cool, can't you see it? And she goes, Pete, only you can see that shit. And I've gone, oh yeah, okay. And she goes, do you want a pad? And I go, okay. So I sat down, I'm trying to work it out. Now snakes, I mean, whether you're Catholic or not, snakes are fairly good universal symbol for betrayal, you know? There's a lot going on there. There is, because you're
Wisdom
snake
and
in the grass,
betrayal,
things
funnily
like that.
enough, it's like snakes are highly intelligent and snakes are highly treacherous. So
But society is sort of led that way. I mean, they can mean different things. This is why, like, Jung's dream interpretation based on Freud's, because Jung said they can mean different things for different people. And I like that. I like that, like, but you would say that a lot of people will sit there and look at snakes and go, fucking, you're Adam and Eve, snake in the glass, treacherous, vipers, predators, you know, that's a lot of people's framework. I'm not saying it's accurate, I'm saying it's a lot of people's framework. So you'd look at betrayal. I'm going, okay, and snakes before for me has meant betrayal. So I look at it and go, okay, So there's that many snakes there. Why am I feeling like this? And why am I feeling betrayed? And these snakes are coming down and trying to rip my missus' head off and stuff like that. I'm going, fuck, you know? And I'm going, oh, yeah, that's interesting. I looked at it and I worked out what it was is because we've moved to Albury, because I've been judged and harshly criticised and warned against working mental health in there because of a lot of manipulation that went on, because my missus is linking in with her old friends and I'm feeling like a third wheel, which is normal, and because I have trouble with change and moving, I'm not feeling very secure because of the betrayal in the past and the manipulation that went on in Albury Wodonga and all that sort of thing. It makes sense I would see them, and when you think about it, they're attacking my missus. I'm scared of losing her. I'm scared that she's going to end up going off with all her friends and I won't be needed anymore, or I won't be wanted anymore, or she'll find someone else. And I mean, I do have that because I have abandonment issues. So it makes sense that I'll be seeing all these snakes. And it's like, as soon as I started figuring that out, pretty much within 5 minutes the numbers had thinned, and within 10 minutes they're gone and I can get back
pretty,
to work.
I mean,
What about the green one? Was it the last to leave or it left early?
No, I left early. I was really pissed about it, actually.
It's really like, I mean, simply much like when you're explaining something to somebody, you're looking for the right metaphor for that person. And perhaps even like your subconscious being aware of who you are is giving you the right metaphor for you. And as the situation gets diffused, even the metaphor itself is like, as it gets diffused, the vision gets diffused at the same time. It's almost like live stream coverage of dealing with your mental issues.
Yeah, well, exactly. And Jung said something interesting, because I did read a little bit of Jung recently, and one of the things he said, and it wasn't Jung, it was John Betts, who is he's a Jungian analyst, and he said something recently. I know it's recent because that's when I started looking at it, but one of the things he said that I thought fit quite well is he said that with dreams, it's something that repeats over and over. It's a message from the subconscious, and if you don't get it, it will repeat over and over again with reoccurring dreams. And if I relate that to a lot of my stuff, it's like, yeah, I totally get that. But I think it's also like, the other thing is, like, if you look at all these things, I mean, fuck, they make so much sense, but at the same time, I don't like putting out information as this is the definitive way, because I think people go with what works with them. And I don't know whether this is definitive. I know that my theories make a lot of sense, probably more than a lot out there at the moment, but someone else will come along and they'll expand upon that, and I'll jump on that bandwagon if I see it working and it makes more sense. Whether I come up with them or not, I don't care. So I don't like to put them out here as definitive. I don't know whether this is right. I do know it lowers the emotional arousal. I do know it lowers the anxiety. I do know it stops freaking people out when they look at it in a framework that makes sense. And a classic example is psychics. I personally don't believe in psychics. And I don't believe in a lot of that stuff. It doesn't mean it's not real. It just means I don't believe in it for me. That's my framework.
Yeah, like there was a very interesting argument to be made, say, even for psychics from a purely, allopathic scientific standpoint, meaning that, I mean, if all they are is seeing and hearing manifestations of their subconscious in their own head, your subconscious takes up so much more information than your consciousness. It's totally plausible, feasible that they have a higher level of awareness. They're merely misinterpreting the source.
But the other thing is also, like, I mean, I look at that framework, and I mean, I think it's personally a lot of the same as what's going on with me, but that's my truth. At the same time, I see them have, or talk about having, very similar experiences to mine, but their framework will not let them end up in the system. If they hear bad spirits, they just ignore them, They've got a bad spiritual attachment and all they have to do something, Psych system. But they're having the same experience as me. They hear good voices telling them things. Well, that's fine. That's a good thing, So their framework, they might see things, but they're spirits, and that's cool. They come to say hi, they come to say bye, stuff like that. They've got to do these things. They see bad spirits, they've got these rituals and things to do and send them in the light. I mean, my mum thinks she's psychic.
Different hellos, different hugs, goodbyes.
No, but you know what I mean. Like, the framework is very much different. And if you take that to schizophrenia, they're pretty much experiencing the same fucking thing. They just got a different framework that doesn't cause them a lot of distress. And I mean, I look at
they feel empowered by it in a way.
Yeah,
exactly.
They have a special, you have a special gift. And I mean, I look at this framework and it works quite well for me, and I see it work quite well for a lot of people with voices as well as some of the other theories, but I don't know. The simple truth is I don't know anything definitively, but I know that it makes so much sense, and maybe the reason it works is because it does make so much sense, and we tend to heal ourselves. So it's like if you believe something, you can make it happen. And I see people that have never heard in recovery, as soon as they start believing in it and believing they can do it, they move forward. And I've worked with people that have moved forward in different ways to this, in different ways to Voices Network, but I've seen them recover from like things like Indian sweat lodges, art therapy, dance therapy, whatever, just complete moving forward. And I go, okay, so if this is right, or if schizophrenia is right, like I have seen people recover on medication. So I think it's important to consider all aspects. But if there's only one definitive way and one definitive explanation...
I'd say that, if you are individually invested, and this happens at a subconscious level, but if you're individually invested in this belief that method A is the method to recovery, whatever that may be, that's kind of you giving your body the permission to make the right type of chemicals which are gonna set you straight. I mean, so many people, it's kind of like the story, you go to the doctor and you're already recovering on the way back from the doctor.
Yeah.
It's just because there is this emotional imprint of your whole society going out to see this guy with a big diploma on his wall and a white coat on him, and everything's going to be better once you see the guy, and then it's almost like a program.
Yeah, if you're focusing on something in your brain, that's the part that's flashing, that's the way the alternate channels are going towards. So you can reroute your life.
Yeah, and I think like I've been learning hypnotherapy recently, like learning how to actually do it, just because I think it fits the psychoanalysis stuff I do quite nicely, and it seems to access the unconscious and the subconscious without dragging it all through the conscious, which is what I often have to do with people. But one of the things I found out was in the First World War, they actually used it as an analgesic. So they ran out of chloroform, they ran out of that. And to do operations, they would hypnotise people and they wouldn't feel it. Not only that, to stop people going into shock, they would hypnotise them and tell them that, you're not going to go into shock, you're going to be okay, the bleeding's going to stop, everything's going to be fine. And the bleeding would actually stop, if not subside, quite a lot. And it's like it made me realise the power of the human mind and what we can accomplish if we just believe. So I don't think there's anything we can't accomplish if we put our minds to it.
No, I very much sort of not really dispute. I'd say question the mechanism, but if you go to any culture and they have a story about your ritualistic event, like people praying for somebody to heal, like the psychic or the shaman or the or the Reiki dude or some energy healer or
point of focus. People point.
The point is especially that recipient of that almost like gives themselves a cue that this is happening, I'm healing, much like the hypnotized person. Their body, to the extent that it's physically possible, pretty much manifests that idea.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, whether you count hypnotism or not, it just shows you the power of the human mind. And I think, like, if you make, and same with negative affirmation, you make positive affirmations, you automatically, over time, you start feeling better. You make negative affirmations, you're gonna. And I do this all the time. I have one little trigger and I make all these negative affirmations, and sure enough, self-fulfilling prophecies, But it just makes you realise the power of the human thought and the power of the human mind. And I think that's a lot of the problem I have with psychiatry. I mean, I'm not pro or anti these days. I used to be anti an attack, but now I'm sort of whatever works, and medication can be helpful for some, and for a lot it's not, and that needs to be respected and follow other options. But it's like they're effectively telling you that you're fucking broken and you've got no chance of ever recovering.
There's a problem with the 12 step program. It's like, you have this problem, you have no control over this problem, you have this problem, you have no control over it. If you want to help somebody, the last thing you want to tell them is that they got no control over. I mean, they're a freaking human being, and if they own something, it is themselves, and if they can control something, it's their own actions. And frankly, like any type of methodology that claims to help people that tells them they got no control over this or that.
If there's something you want to eliminate in yourself or you want to kill or block out, then absolving yourself of responsibility is good. Like the way armies kill people, it's not you doing it. You're ordered from above. You're ordered.
Yeah, very much
it's not me pressing the button. He told me to press the button. You know, that is the way we deal with things that we got to knock out, because we know we have a personal relationship. Oh, we love it when we shoot up. We love it when we do this, shout at our brother, whatever we do. But absolving yourself of responsibility, you know, passes the buck, and, you know, you can deal with it.
Yeah, you're right. And we never move forward. I mean, I played the blame game for fucking, honestly, 32 years I played the blame game. And then I got to the point where I looked at it and said, well, this isn't working for me. It's like, what are the things that I can control and what are the things I can do? And in any situation, the only things I can control are the things that I can control. I can't control the people around me. Like I used to be, and still struggle with, a big control freak. I used to have things planned out 6 months before they happened, and I'll manipulate people and situations. So I've led that path. How I got into this job was I told Hearing Voices Network I was doing a talk for Horizons in Horsham, and I told Horizons I was doing a talk for Voices Vic or Hearing Voices Network, and I ended up doing 2 talks. But before that, before I spoke to either of them, I wasn't doing any talks at all. I just had a lot to say and I wanted to get it out there, and I always thought it was persuasion. I justified it by saying it's persuasion and it has a good outcome for people, but persuasion is apparently manipulation. And it was so easy for me to actually plan all this shit and feel like it wasn't my fault, but it was only when I started looking at these things. And I mean, I can look back and I can go over all these things that happened to me, and yeah, they shouldn't have happened, and other people did these things, but it doesn't make me feel any good. It makes me feel like shit. It makes me feel like I had no control. I'm a victim, and I fucking hate that. I think it's a stage you go through that needs to be going through to process things, but at the same time, the end of where I'm at now is, yes, all these things happen. What the fuck could I have done about it? And I mean, like,
at this stage, nothing. Yeah, this is where I'm at, and that's, you know, what do I do about it now is the only question.
Yeah, but if I look back and realise that there are things I could have done to change those situations, and granted I'm looking back with an adult's understanding and new skills and new knowledge, it makes me feel like I got control over the future, and that makes me feel good. So at things that happen now with that adult understanding, I'll look at what I've got control over, what I can do about the situation, not what others can do, you know?
I'll tell you an interesting thing. I don't know if there's a lot of psychology behind it, but the things that trip me up personally is situations that are out of my, not necessarily even control. Like, let's say you have a problem, and you ask yourself constructively, what is it that I can do about it? Well, I'm going with that. This is the best thing I could do about it. That's what I'm going to do. And all of a sudden, the big problem is no longer a big problem. You sort it out. You have a course of action, whatever will be. But when it's really like a toss-up of a situation, and it's not really up to you, you're depending on other people to make the decision, and you're the recipient of the outcome. That lack of any constructive action available to you.
Hesitation kills for sure, even just on the roads.
Like that, but in my view, like any problem that I can think of an obvious action, even that may or may not fix it, but just like if I know, okay, this is the best course of action to deal with the problem, I don't find it to be a big problem. It's kind of like, shit happens, it is what it is, and like I'm doing my best, and this is the best thing I can do about it. Alright, whatever, let's say
But when there's a problem that someone else has got to make a decision on,
yes,
to fix it, yeah. Look at this, right? My control issues come from having a lack of control. And because of that lack of control, things happen that hurt me, stored in imprints I've expressed. So if something is why I used to be, and possibly for him, I don't know, a control freak, is because it's a lot of things happen that will be on my control that hurt me. So I overcompensate by trying to control them, and when things are out of it freaks me out.
Perhaps I got a really good example. Someone else driving and then bumps or whatever, they make a sharp turn, I get scared shitless. I could be sleepy, over the limit, well, anything. If I'm behind the wheel, I feel safe in the car if I'm behind the wheel. If someone else is, I quite often I don't.
Yeah, exactly. And like you think about it, like amygdala imprint in there, something happened that made you feel unsafe, made you feel hurt emotionally or physically. you're going to store it there. So you do feel a bit better when you are in control of the situation.
Yeah, it's not like, I don't know what the psychological root is, but I'll tell you what, like, I mean, this is why I kind of excelled at individual sport, it's, the idea is, alright, if I made a mistake, I find it much easier to live with my own mistakes than I find to be on the bad end of someone else's mistakes. Like, you get what I mean? Like,
I get what you mean, but I think, like,
if someone else makes a mistake and I pay for it, then why? It feels unjust. If I make a mistake and I pay for it, okay.
Yeah.
My mistake, I should pay for it, everything's okay with the world. If someone else does, I feel like, well, now this is, kind of like the universe doesn't align anymore. I didn't deserve this.
Yeah, I get what you're saying,
Yeah.
And I think, like, I'm not saying that I was responsible for all the things that happened to me, and I'm not saying that people are. I'm saying that if you look at what you can change for next time, I mean, because if you look at it, think of that line of framework, something happens to you and you think, why did this happen? What the hell? And I mean, that's fair enough. You're justifying your hurt, and that's a good thing because it's not right that a lot of things happen, and it's good to justify those feelings. But if you spend 20 years doing that, why did this happen? I'm a terrible person. This is, eventually you just fucking go downhill. If you sit there and go, well, I don't understand why this happened, you go through the motions of feeling the hurt and whatnot, and trying to make sense of it, and then you go, well, you know what can I actually do to prevent this happening next time? You know what I mean? It's like, it's a situation of creating a framework where you can justify your feelings around the situation that's unjust and whatnot, but then moving forward,
Yeah.
That's sort of where I'm going with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Well, while we had a bit of a break, I'd like to ask you a bit of a question about the development of voices or identities. I'd say identities is where I'm more at. As part of therapy that I did, which involved deep meditation, I actually developed various entities. This was all done under the guidance of a psychiatrist and a therapist and stuff like that. And I found those voices / identities to be very helpful.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, do you regret having to leave any of your voices?
Oh shit, yeah, all of them.
Well, can you develop them back again, or
no? I haven't
Too
really
dangerous.
thought about it, honestly.
Right.
Haven't thought about it. I miss them because towards the end, when I did talk to them and change the relationship, they were quite respectful, and I used to have these talks with him about the psychoanalytical theories, and if you've ever had a backboard to bounce off things and to add little things, and even, communicating with you guys the last 6 hours or whatever, that's expanded my knowledge because it's got me thinking down different patterns, and it was great, and they were really helpful, but I really miss them now. I shouldn't have got rid of them. I didn't expect that to happen at the end of the program. It just did.
You might want to look into.
Like your tail falling off, I think.
You might want to. Well, no, but they can be useful, and I think many people have found them useful. I know a number of other people that do develop these alternative identities and stuff like that, and use them in their everyday life.
Yeah, I think
so.
right.
You might want to look into some shamanic stuff or deep meditation stuff.
You want them back, don't you?
I've got them.
You want him to get his back.
No, if he finds them useful,
they were quite useful, but then it's a matter of were they useful or did I just adapt to them?
Everyone can be friendly.
I mean, it's hard because I'm at the stage now where I've justified my right to feel. I've expressed a lot of the stuff from the past, and even though I've got triggers and stuff, I've expressed enough that my voices are gone. I've got to learn to sit with all these things. It's only when I went through the intensive support program me and Tori designed, I got in touch with all these emotions. I never felt this shit before. Guilt, stress, judgment, all these fucking things that I've never felt before, or at least not been aware of, because I was obviously responding on them, I just wasn't aware. It's really hard for me to learn what these are and how they correlate to my life and what I'm supposed to do about them. But I have to, because otherwise I enter an amygdala hijack. So mindfulness has worked well, and it's worked well to help me think before I respond to an emotion. But all these things are new for me. All these emotions I'm feeling that I suppressed or wasn't aware of. I don't know whether you suppress them. Maybe you're just not aware of them. But yeah, it's interesting anyway.
How long do you think we've been sitting here?
Too long, probably. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
It's just under 3. It's not actually. I thought it would be 3.5, but yeah.
Shit, I'm gonna get moving soon.
Fair enough.
Peter's going to get back to Auburn.
3 hours is reasonable. That's the maximum length of exam to have reflective results.
Is it?
Yeah. And we had a bunch of breaks. You don't have breaks in exams.
Thanks.
Alright, well, should we just wave to the people that are going to watch us? There'll be couple hundred or so. See you guys.
I'm going to send links. Is this going to be on the internet or where's it going to be? I should know the details already.
Yes, This song is called Be the Change, inspired by the words of Mahatma Gandhi, who lived for peace and not violence, and told us to be the change we wish to see in the world. Freedom's calling, I feel the fire that's deep inside us. Everybody wants change, but tell me who will guide us. To the leaders that pass away, put up your lighters. It's a beautiful struggle, but it cannot divide us. We're the ones that we've always been waiting for. See yourself in the mirror and open up the door. Walk through it and feel the love throughout your pores. Be the light, life's purpose is to feel joy. Metaphysical, lyrical, standing up for truth. The only one to make change is walking in your shoes. Be the example, don't complain about the news. Making music and serving the world with the loo. Now you can be the same, or you can be the change. Find strength from inside, break through the chains. No one to blame, nothing to prove. You create your reality, it's up to you. Be the change that you wanna see in the world. Like Gandhi live for peace, aspire to peace. Someone who fights for the beliefs like Martin Luther King. Aspire to be that love, that light, like Christ, life for the moment in need. And if you believe in Jehovah, Allah, Buddha, Krishna, it's love to me.
My soul yearns for peace in a world that's flooded with war. History's littered with body scar, trying to settle the score to maintain an archaic platform of power and greed. People fight for land out of survival and need. So I'm killing my television and I'm planting a seed to fill my head with knowledge that I'm seeing recede. Due to the media propaganda killing my creed. Or what don't kill me make me stronger, feeling straight when I bleed. Fight for interest before it's attached to feet. They try to say you anything in this world, nothing for free. Land, air, fire, and water, they keep up in the ante while the anti-proletariat told the powers to be. But we keep fighting, surviving and thriving, recycling and rhyming. We constantly inclining, we see through the lying and prying. They tactically keep trying to keep you from asking the why.
Be the change that you wanna see in the world. Like Gandhi live for peace, aspire to peace. Someone who fights for the beliefs like Martin Luther King. Aspire to be that love, that light, like Christ, life for the moment in need. And if you believe in Jehovah, Allah, Buddha, Krishna, it's love to me. We find solutions, different possibilities, creating organizations like Aspire to Be, inspiring young minds to see, building life skills, nurturing creativity, fulfilling the youth's basic needs, listening actively, teaching the tools to succeed, positive role models, we plant the seed, the roots drink the water which feed the trees, someone help me, giving back is my responsibility. Be the change that you wanna see in the world. Like Gandhi live for peace, aspire to peace. Someone who fights for the beliefs like Martin Luther King. Aspire to be that love, that light, like Christ, life for the moment in need. And if you believe in Jehovah, Allah, Buddha, Krishna, it's love to me. Aspire to be. Be the change you wanna see in the world. Aspire to be. Be the change you wanna see in the world. Aspire to be. Aspire to be. Aspire to be. Be the change you wanna see in the world. Aspire to be. Be the change you wanna see in the world. Aspire to be. Be the change you wanna see in the world. Aspire to be. Aspire to be. Aspire to be. Aspire to be.